Hello everyone, this is part 28 of What If Naruto Was Born in the Uzumaki clan, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. 2 days later, Naruto sat in his chair lost deep in his own thoughts while his gaze lingered on the girl peacefully sleeping in his bed. It felt strange to see Akeno like this, but also made him happy that for once in his life he was finally getting a chance to fulfill his wishes. His mother was back with him. His village was safe and so was the north. His clan would live on. He had gained the support of great friends and comrades. And the love of 2 beautiful and extraordinary women. There was nothing more he wanted from life, and his thoughts went back towards the dream he had a few months ago. A vision where he saw 2 young boys clashing wooden swords playfully. The elder of the boys bore a striking resemblance to Naruto himself but had the eyes of his mother. While the younger one had bright silver hair and stark blue eyes just like Naruto himself. Now he knew that the vision was becoming a reality, and the boys he had imagined could possibly be his own sons someday. His children. The sheer hope of that excited him and scared him at the same time. Would his own children hate him just like he had hated his own father for a long time? Would his sons hate each other like he had hated Obito for quite some time for having something Naruto himself never had? Would his sons understand the reason behind the things their father had done in his life? Would they accept him? He stopped those thoughts quickly because it terrified him. What he did know was the fact that he had to win this war so that someday those 2 boys could live the life he never had. For their tomorrow, he would his today. Standing up from his chair, he walked towards the bed and glanced at Akeno for a long moment. She looked so peaceful with a dreamy smile on her face. Even he had to admit, it had felt good and strange even if it had been the 3rd time. But from now she was not just his best friend but something more. And considering the upcoming conflict, he knew what decision he had to make. She would yell, rage, scream, even hate him for it, but he had made up his mind. When he stepped outside his tent, his pet wolf had been sleeping nearby but instantly got up and walked towards him. Naruto knelt and ruffled its fur, receiving a sloppy lick from the beast. Hanzo had given him an invaluable gift, for this wolf had saved his life and fought for him even fiercely than most ninjas. He was family, and for all his support Naruto would honor his friend and battle partner. The Uzumaki clan had their own symbol, and while he was still a part of it, he had to create a distinct idini for his own royal family now that he was king. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" asked a familiar voice. With a smile Naruto looked up from the beast to the person who was his brother in all but be. It was quite scary how they were able to understand each other without any words. How with just a single glance they both could understand what was in the other's heart. "Do you think it is a good move?" asked Naruto in reply, earning a smile from his friend. "It is, while you are still an Uzumaki and a part of the clan, but you are also the king of the entire north. You can keep our clan symbol as your own, but it could show favoritism and the other people of the north would not like that. A new flag and symbol would mean a fresh start for everyone, including the Uzumaki," explained Nagato patiently. "Then I guess Ghost here will be the poster boy of my family," said Naruto cheekily, receiving another lick from the wolf. He saw Nagato nod as a truly happy smile came on his friend's face. "I'm truly happy for you, Naruto. And I for you, brother. Don't worry, we'll find you a few nice girls," teased the king, making Nagato chuckle. "Just one is more than enough for me. Believe me, the day you will have a family full of your own children it'll make you wonder whether taking 2 wives was the correct call," said Nagato jovially, but Naruto shrugged. "We'll cross that bridge when we get there, but I won't have it any other way." "You think I'll have a family?" Nagato didn't fail to miss the slight hope and fear in Naruto's voice when he asked that. His friend had been through a lot in his life, and perhaps it was the thought of a family someday that was giving Naruto hope. So he placed his hand on the king's shoulder and looked him in the eye. "A big one. Considering you'll have 2 wives, I'd say 5 children." Naruto's eyes widened in shock on hearing that. He had only imagined 2 of his but 5. He would go crazy. Nagato chuckled openly at the worried look on his friend's face. I think they'll be a mix of you and their mothers. I'm just guessing, but the eldest will completely take after you in kindness and skill. The second one could be a girl, I think, more like Conan than you, and the third one could be a sweet and curious little boy whom your entire family can dote upon. This is what I think your family with Conan would be like, but with Akeno I pray the gods help you, because any children of you both have will be wild like her and broody like you were in your younger days. Nagato smirked on seeing the king going deathly pale as the snow found in the north. Relax. You will be a good father and a good king, said Nagato confidently. You sure do have a lot of faith in me, asked Naruto embarrassingly, his cheeks turning red. It is because you have a unique strength in you that makes people believe. Naruto, you have lived a selfless life and fought for the rights of others while your own. You are a guardian. He looked into his friend's eyes for any sign of doubt, but there was none, for Nagato truly believed what he had just said. And in doing so, he had given Naruto some hope that he had not failed everyone too terribly. Are Conan and the others settled? He asked. They arrived 2 hours ago and have rested just as you asked. Now we must plan our attack again, advised Nagato, completely accepting Naruto's change of topic, knowing his friend always had trouble in accepting any praise. Very well. I'll meet you by the command tent shortly. Nagato nodded and saw his friend walk away in the opposite direction with Ghost right beside him. He couldn't help but smile when he saw Naruto being greeted respectfully by the Union soldiers, even more by the Uzumaki and Northerners for whom the young boy was becoming a legend. It had been a long and painful journey for Naruto, but today, he became a man people looked up to. He stared at the gear laid before him. The one that he would carry in battle, the armor had been polished and dents removed. His sword had been swiped clean of all the B and sharpened to the maximum extent. Even the hilt was changed to make the weapon more lighter and easier to handle. His shuriken, kunai, explosive notes and ceiling tags were also in order just as he required. But most important were the dozens of three-pronged kunai ready before him. They would be the ones that would help him determine the fate of the battle, along with the chakra seals to replenish his reserves when he ran low. He knew that he could perform quite devastating jutsu, even more so now that he had gone through Madara's memories that had provided him with forbidden techniques. However, such great power must be used cautiously and with proper justification, lest he endanger the ones following him. Yet the most dangerous thing among all the army of weapons was a simple scroll. It was enough to make the Uzumaki before him leave a considerable distance and nervously glance at the scroll. My king, I beg of you not to use that jutsu. It was forbidden by our ancestors, said the Uzumaki worriedly. I understand, Shokachi. Tell me, do you have children? Asked the king patiently, earning a nod from his clansmen. 2 girls, my king. Naruto smiled. And you would do anything to protect them? Even my own life, my king, replied Shokachi without hesitation, as he remembered his 2 sweet girls back home waiting for him. Then he saw the young king give him a knowing smile. As king, every person of the North, every civilian, every soldier, and even those of the Union are my children. It is my job to look after them all. It is a daunting task and often terrifies me, but a man must do his duty. Stopping Orochimaru at all costs is my only concern, because until he we will never have peace, explained Naruto seriously. But the price, said Shokachi hesitantly, as he fearfully glanced at the scroll. The older Uzumaki blanched when Naruto picked up the scroll without hesitation and placed it on himself. Shokachi could only watch his king take up the rest of his weapons. He could hardly believe that this was the same lone boy who used to roam the streets of their village, who used to be isolated and didn't try to interact with others, not that they wanted to do such a thing in the first place. Yet today the same boy was fighting for them, forgetting all past misgivings. Naruto had just about exited when the older man asked a question. Why, my king? He remained standing with his back to his clansmen, staring out at the vast camp full of thousands of Union ninjas. And then he looked back at the older Uzumaki. Because I am Naruto Uzumaki, king of the North, and guardian of the Union. He had been sitting on a nearby steep hill observing the vast forests before him. All the plans had been made, the army had assembled and was ready, yet Orochimaru had not attacked. It either showed the man was facing difficult gathering support or was up to something nasty. Now that the man was Hokage, Naruto could only imagine the forbidden techniques within his grasp that he could use to wreak havoc on the Union forces. He smiled on seeing the person he had called for arrive so quickly. Hanzo wordlessly sat beside him and took in the vast scenery. You were fast, pointed Naruto. When a king calls for you, it is best to answer swiftly, replied the older man with a kind smile. I'm thankful for all the support you have given me, said Naruto sincerely, gaining a nod from the AM leader. You are like a son to me and I am proud of the leader you have become. My only request is that our nations remain friends and you look after Konan. She loves you dearly, it is hard for her to openly display her affection or emotions but she is a loyal girl and a daughter to me even if we don't share explained Hanzo seriously, and couldn't help the small warning tone from seeping into his voice even if he was addressing Naruto Uzumaki himself. Thankfully, the boy simply smiled kindly. I understand. And I promise to look after her. That was enough to satisfy the older man. Naruto Uzumaki was a man of honor, and if he made a promise he would keep it come hell or worse. You didn't summon an old man like me all this way up just for a chat? Asked Hanzo jovially, making Naruto laugh before his expression became grim. I need advice, he stated. You are better at war than most cages today. What makes you think I have something you don't? Asked Hanzo curiously. Experience. Hanzo-sama, I want you to fight by my side against Orochimaru. The AM leader glanced at the young boy and saw the sincerity and seriousness in his stark blue eyes. He himself didn't know much about Orochimaru, but he trusted Naruto and if the boy was taking this opponent this seriously then it was best he offered the boy all the help. It would be an honor, agreed Hanzo, and saw Naruto's shoulders sag in relief. I have already decided which of our officers and leaders would do what. I cannot take any of my friends or the girls with me against Orochimaru, while they're strong and brave ninjas but against that monster I would need some truly powerful to back me. I don't trust the other cages, but I trust you, explained Naruto in detail. Hanzo only nodded as he saw the logic behind that decision. Orochimaru was a cage himself, and the last time Naruto had been left quite vulnerable when his mother's life was in danger. It had almost led to his death in battle, and he was not willing to make the same mistake again. Are the other leaders assembled? Asked Naruto after a pause. They are, answered Hanzo, and saw the boy staring at the setting sun in the sky. Then it is best I lay out the plan for them for night is coming, said Naruto seriously, clenching his fist shut. Hanzo's eyes briefly widened as he realized the true meaning behind those words. They had received no warning yet from any of their scouts or front life defenders. Are you sure? Asked Hanzo lastly. I am. Hanzo remained silent and listened as the young boy explained how they were going to deal with Orochimaru. It was risky but had to be done and Hanzo in the end agreed with Naruto's wish. Top-ranking officers and cages of the Union forces looked at the king as he read through the scroll presented to him moments ago. If possible, Naruto's usual grim expression had turned even more s. When he stared back at them all, they knew. Tonight. The people in the tent stiffened at the declaration knowing what was coming. They looked at each other and then back at the king who stared at them all with confidence and determination burning in his hardened eyes. Jiraiya and Kisame are in retreat. They managed to clear some towns but were forced to retreat as they caught sight of the main enemy army approaching their way. The enemy will be here shortly, revealed Naruto. How many? Asked the Kazekage. Thousands. Pandemonium broke out among the group as everyone started to debate how Konoha could possibly have that many numbers when their battle forces had been s. They were all forced to become silent when Naruto leaked his intent forcing their attention back at him. We do not know who they are nor do we have the time to find out. We have 20,000 soldiers depending on us for leadership and we will not fail them. Do you all understand? Asked Naruto seriously, boring his eyes into those of all his supporters. We do, assured Mifune. Good. Now, I plan to divide our forces into 3 groups with each having 6,000 soldiers. The Kazekage will command the left flank, the Mizukage the right. The center comprising of the last 6,000 will be headed by Mifune. While Nagato will hold the rear with the remaining 2,000 forces ready to help any side that looks to be in trouble. Konan and Kyusuke, you both shall handle our aerial troops and your objective will be to take out every enemy officer and dangerous warriors. Yahiko and Daibutsu shall be leading the vanguard. While, I, Hanzo, Galatea, Tsunade, Kisame, and Jiraiya shall confront Orochimaru. He waited for any objections or questions but thankfully found none. He had formulated this plan taking into account experience, political play, and strength. The two cages commanding their twin flanks were strong enough and capable to maintain the battle lines, so was Mifune with his vast experience. Konan and Kyusuke were precise fighters and could be used effectively to cripple key enemy officers and soldiers. Yahiko and Daibutsu were frontline fighters and would be most effective in the battle. While Hanzo, Galatea and Kisame were the people he trusted and would help him deal with Orochimaru. Naruto was also testing the loyalty of Jiraiya and Tsunade by pitting him against their former teammate. Those two knew Orochimaru better than anyone. Jiraiya was a fighter and could prove useful, while Tsunade was a great medic who could rescue any of the group if they were injured in battle. It was a risky move but he was willing to take it. What about us? Asked Akeno with a frown. You are excellent medic and I could use your skills to help save the wounded. Lead the medical division in the rear and Nagato will help guard you all, answered Naruto frankly. Akeno was about to protest for there was no way in hell she wanted to leave the man she loved or any of her friends without her help in this final battle. But she froze on seeing the ice-cold look in Naruto's eyes, one that dared her to defy and face the consequences which she won't like. One look at him and she knew he was serious. He may have forgiven her for being reckless before but he would not do so again. Reluctantly, she backed down after not being able to hold his steely gaze for long. Naruto could be quite scary when he wanted to, even to the ones he dearly cared about. She knew he was right and was using her skills where they were most needed, but that didn't stop her from worrying about him. But she also remembered that even Nagato was not allowed to be on the front line and her friend had also accepted Naruto's decision even if he didn't like it. They had trusted Naruto so far, maybe it was best if they did it this final time as well. And me? Asked Kushina hesitantly, earning a glance from her son. In the rear under the protection of Nagato. While our clansmen have removed the seal that made you go ballistic under Orochimaru's manipulation at Castle Storm, I cannot risk exposing you or the Union soldiers to that threat again. We do not know what dangerous things Konoha could have done to you. But still if the need arises, I leave it to Nagato to make the decision regarding you, mother, explained Naruto honestly. Kushina sighed and nodded knowing that she was an uncertain factor that had costed her son nearly his life and she didn't want to do so again. And Naruto had not entirely ruled her out from stepping into battle, but only to keep her safe as a trump card. Nagato firmly nodded in confirmation which relieved the king for his best friend was supporting him without question. This is it, everyone. All that we have fought for, every we have made so far, all the pain our people have suffered was for this moment. I believe in all of you and your conviction towards the great future that we have all dreamed of. Naruto saw his simple words had made them all stand more straight and proud, their previous apprehensions taking a back seat in their minds as they stared at him for strength, something which he gave without question. We will not fail. We will not run. We will face them. And we will win. He unleashed his sword and raised it in the air, eyes burning with ferocity and conviction which ignited the burning fire in all their hearts. For the Union. One by one he watched every person join him with determination in their eyes. Konan found him after searching the entire camp for nearly an hour. Their previous plan of a blitzkrieg attack could not be implemented because it took the Union army 2 days to reach the camp and another half a day to get the 20,000 soldiers ready. And the enemy had used the time to advance right to their doorstep. She knew some of that failure lay on her shoulders for not being able to move the troops faster when Naruto asked her to. Yet Naruto never snapped at her or the other leaders for their failure, he simply chose to formulate a new plan in accordance with the changed situation. She saw him interacting with the newly arrived Jiraiya and Kisame gathering whatever critical information they couldn't have shared in the short message. On seeing her approach, the two men excused themselves leaving her alone with him. What happened? She asked, on seeing his frown. The monsters we saw were turned that way by Orochimaru by using some kind of curse seal. Jiraiya and Kisame discovered that when they observed the B of the ones they had to K, explained Naruto angrily. Can they be saved? Some way to reverse the seal and bring those innocents back? She asked hopefully. His silence was all the answer she needed to know. What worried her was the sight of him shaking in anger, his hands clenched shut turning the skin deathly pale. Naruto, I understand war. I understand, Kay. My own hands are stained with the bee of innocence, but this, he whispered furiously. She placed a hand on his shoulder, making him look back at her, and she saw the unending hate in his eyes for that man. Don't lose your cool, she advised, as he saw few of the nearby soldiers had started backing away on feeling his dangerous K intent marred in dark chakra. His anger vanished as his shoulders slumped. And in his eyes Conan saw a blind desire to end Orochimaru no matter what the cost. Her other hand hesitantly touched her belly subconsciously, and thankfully he missed that subtle action in his rage. Naruto. He looked back at her and she stared at him worriedly. You still have time. Conan. She could already see his volatile emotions. Orochimaru and Danzo had always brought out his dark side. And she didn't want to add to that dangerous emotional wave, so she carefully chose her words. K him. But don't lose yourself. We need you, she requested, as his eyes widened because this time he saw her quickly remove her hand from the previous spot over her belly. We? He asked hesitantly. If not for her years of training as a ninja, Conan would have flinched. But she didn't and looked back at him calmly. All of us. Our friends, our comrades, our family. His gaze softened, the momentary panic and worry in his eyes as he realized his presumption was wrong. That an alarming possibility he had just imagined was indeed not a reality. Relieved, he hugged her and was glad when she hugged him back fiercely. All I want is for you to be happy. I don't care what I have to for that, but I am here for you. Now and always, so come back to me, she said softly, a lone tear falling from her eyes. He was glad that she couldn't see his face, for he did flinch on hearing her heartwarming desire and the love she had for him. But it was the same thing that made him even more determined to end this no matter what happened so that she could live. Thank you for loving me, Conan. And I love you too. She smiled and gently broke the hug only to K him passionately. It always made her happy to hear him say those magic words. Despite her rational way of life, she loved to be held like this in his arms, to be loved and cared for by him. But in those happy thoughts she failed to miss Naruto's grim look or the fact that he evaded her request of being careful. Kushina had been helping the medical ninja in setting up the makeshift tents where the wounded could be treated when she saw everyone suddenly stop. Confused, she looked at the direction where everyone was looking at and smiled on seeing it was her son that was the center of this pause. He greeted everyone before making his way towards her. As he approached, Kushina couldn't help but be proud on seeing him fully dressed in his battle armor ready for his final victory. She couldn't help but hug him and whisper, I'm proud of you, Sochi. Naruto didn't smile at the praise, nor did he respond, but instead he remained silent as his arms tightened around his mother as he fought to control his emotions. But after a few moments he had to let go of her for people were looking at them. I still wish you let me fight beside you. I'm your mother, you know. It's my job to protect you, she said with a silly pout on her face making him smile. Mother. She paused on hearing his voice. It was different and she knew her child better than anyone, which made her glance back at him. Thank you. Somehow those words that would have made her tear up any other time only made her heart skip a beat. Why are you saying this, Sochi? Asked Kushina worriedly, placing a hand on his cheek as he shook his head. So much has happened and you gave up so much for me. So did father, and Obito. I wouldn't be here without all the my B family made for me. All my life I hated my family, but I'm glad that I am your B. Can you promise me something, mother? He asked hopefully. Anything, whispered Kushina, now truly worried for she knew he was hiding something. The look in her boy's eyes was familiar, a look she had seen somewhere before on someone's face. Please go back to Azu and live happily. If you find someone who can love you, then please be with them. I just want you to be happy, he requested with that same heartbreaking smile. I don't need anyone else in my life. I have my son for that, she said fiercely, but faltered when he blinked for a second. Don't I? She asked in fear. He her forehead pouring in all the love and affection he had for this woman. Kushina teared up as she felt the warmth radiating off him. He truly loved her even after the way their lives were messed up. Always. When he stepped back, Kushina was now truly afraid for him. Something was not right, she could feel it in her heart. She opened her lips to ask him a question when a voice called for him. He turned away from her and swiftly walked out of the tent, leaving her in a daze. By the time she snapped out of her thoughts and ran out of the tent, he had already disappeared in the massive camp of their army. Sochi. Kisum had done what his friend had asked of him. He had called out for him when it looked like Kushina was going to erupt with a ton of questions. It had given Naruto the opportunity to retreat, and now they were both walking across the camp's borders observing the defenses being set up. And the swordsman was one of the two people who truly knew what was really on Naruto's mind. The other person was Hanzo. Are you really sure about this? Asked Kisum seriously, which made Naruto sigh. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I am keeping all options open for now, answered the king. Maybe you're overestimating him, questioned Kisum, for despite all his skills Orochimaru was still just a man. And a man can be K. No, I know him, perhaps better than any one of you. For he and I are monsters of dark and have walked the path of madness. Kisum blinked on hearing him say that. It would seem there was more to Naruto and his arch-enemy that everyone had missed. PFFT. I'll just chop his head off and prove you wrong, scoffed Kisum. Wouldn't that be a great twist? Said Naruto with a chuckle. They both had to stop when they saw Akeno marching towards their position. And she looked quite agitated. Carefully Kisum started to back away when his friend spoke. Just where are you going? Asked Naruto in a fake hurt voice. Women are troublesome. That one more so, answered Kisum frankly, looking at the nearing Uzumaki. Didn't you swear to protect my life against anything? Asked Naruto with a pout. Kisum shamefully shrugged. Change of contract terms. With that the swordsman walked away whistling a funny tune just to further piss off his friend. Traitor, whispered Naruto with a sigh. He had no time to dwell on his thoughts as she was right in front of him now. And she didn't look happy at all. Akeno might have held her tongue in the command meeting, but now that they were alone he prepared himself for a stubborn confrontation. I want to fight beside you, she stated flatly, making him sigh again. He had been doing a lot of that today. She frowned when he smiled idiotically, lost in his own thoughts, making her pinch his arm, eliciting a growl from him. No, I can help, she insisted stubbornly. I know, he replied calmly, much to her increasing ire. Then why won't you let me help you? He remained silent and simply settled for giving her a long stare which made her heart stop for a moment. Naruto, is something wrong? She asked worriedly, placing her hands on his shoulders, but he simply continued staring at her with that frustrating calm gaze of his. No, I want you to use your skills where they are best suitable. I know you are a skilled fighter and can handle yourself in a battle quite well, but I know you can save more lives with your medical ninjutsu. What is more important, Akeno? Your personal desire or the lives that you can actually save with your talent? Asked Naruto patiently, making her glare at him. My personal desire involves protecting you. My wish involves giving a damn about your life. I already lost you once, I cannot do so again, she whispered, lowering her gaze to the ground in order to hide her tears. He gently lifted her chin and her lips, an action which surprised her at first but soon enough relieved her tense body as she relaxed in his embrace, taking in all the comfort and reassurance he was offering. When he looked in her eyes, she saw his iron resolve present. I'll be careful, and I'll have Sunad to heal me if I get injured, he explained, making her scoff in an unladylike fashion. Yeah, that old hag will probably suffocate you with her voluptuous, she replied snarkily, receiving a surprise pinch from him which made her yelp. Language, women. You have quite the potty mouth, he chided. Instead of making her angry, the remark made her laugh boisterously, drawing strange looks from the nearby soldiers. Naruto ignored it all and simply took in her laughing face keenly without saying a word. Finally, she looked back at him with a resigned look on his face. All right, I had to try at least, even if you were not going to agree. But if you get yourself I'll bring you back and you again for being stupid. Got it? She asked menacingly, with a dangerous glint in her eyes. Hi. She hugged him fiercely while trying not to sob in his sea as he took in her scent while his eyes were still fixed on the scroll on his hip. Yahiko gazed out at the dark forest ahead of him. Strangely enough, the moon was not shining in the sky tonight, making their surroundings even more darker and nerve-wracking. His only comfort was that he was not alone in this dark night, and with him were thousands of soldiers, not to mention the king himself, who had chosen to stand at the front despite objections from other leaders considering his safety. But when Naruto made up his mind, there was no stopping him. Besides, it gave Yahiko some comfort that here at the end of this war he had a man who he could trust right beside him. That was besides the presence of Daibutsu on his other side, who was also a reassuring presence. He had to admit Naruto had chosen the terrain quite carefully after their blitzkrieg strategy could not be implemented due to the late arrival of their main army. They had 20,000 soldiers for the coming battle. They could have had more, but Naruto had insisted to leave a few thousand behind in Iwagakure to finish what little resistance that remained under Arima Uzumaki's command. That way the Union didn't have to worry about an attack from their rear. As for their battlefield, they had a tall mountain on their right preventing any army from flanking them from that side. On their left was a great river which, while crossable, would expose any army that tried to do so and give the Union ample time to mount up the defense and push their foes back. To their back was the path that led to the mountain on which Union forces had taken refuge for quite some time. If things went south, then Naruto had made ample preparations that would allow the defeated forces to retreat back to the strong fort and plan their next move. That only left one course of action for the enemy: a frontal attack. And Naruto had made sure their enemies were going to face a lot of surprises when they arrived. But still Yahiko couldn't stop his nervousness. Jiraiya had revealed that some cursed seal was the reason behind all those innocent people turning into monsters. Even Kisame had said those monsters fought wildly and took a hell of lot more wounds to even S. It took 2 ninjas to K one of them. And now they had an army of thousands of monsters marching in the direction. Yahiko hesitantly glanced at his friend who was standing beside his giant wolf, both man and beast staring out at the dark forest with a knowing look in their eyes. It was as if they knew what horror was approaching their way and had prepared themselves to face it bravely. Yahiko admired and envied such resolve at the same time. The remaining cages and officers had already assembled their forces on both flanks and center, and Nagato was waiting in the rear to support any side that needed it, along with the medical division under Akino ready to save their wounded. All that was left was the fight to arrive at the doorstep. Let it be known that it is not the battle that scares most ninjas, nor the prospect of death, because they have been trained for that possibility their entire lives. But it was the waiting that unnerved most warriors, as their idle minds ran at light speeds projecting worse and even worse possibilities. And not even the presence of strong leaders like Naruto could stop that, for the mind of a man could conjure up limitless good and bad scenarios. If he had not been paying attention, Yahiko would have missed Naruto's words that were barely above a whisper. They are here. Sure enough, because seconds later their sensor ninjas started yelling out warnings, which was soon followed by the rumbling of the ground that marked the arrival of their enemy. Yahiko unleashed his sword and watched the ninjas around him raise their weapons ranging from staff, bokken, sickle, twin blades, tanto, bows and arrows, and much more. They all gripped their weapons tightly as warning shouts rang out across their entire army. Yahiko gulped when he heard cannibalistic growls growing louder and louder, and he sucked in a deep breath when he caught sight of wild eyes emerging from the darkness of the forest. It was Naruto who stepped ahead of the army and stared at the approaching thousands of shadows with an unnervingly calm gaze. Now, it was as if the sun had exploded into a million stars as half of the forest erupted in giant explosions that were set off by the hidden explosives placed by the Union under Naruto's orders. Naruto again raised his hand, stopping the breaths of many of his soldiers. Burn them! Yahiko watched as dozens of paper birds flew across the sky under the steady command of Konan and Kyusuke. The newly formed bomber division started dropping large barrels of a very familiar liquid created by the Uzumaki clan across the already burning forest. When their task was done, Naruto looked up in the sky and saw that his friend was ready. He nodded at Kaisuke, who aimed his burning arrow and after a long second loosened it. Yahiko would never forget the few seconds of his life when he saw that single flaming arrow falling from the sky into the forest. Nor would he forget nearly being blown off his feet when the entire forest exploded into a massive green nuclear explosion that sent dozens of Union soldiers sailing away with the shock wave of the blast. Even their chakra control couldn't stop them from flying away like useless dolls. The Union army watched in fascination and horror as the entire forest burned before the very eyes, and the horrifying screams of the monsters who were once innocent people would haunt every man and woman for the rest of their lives. It was finally over. Relieved sighs could be heard escaping from the lips of Union soldiers. While all of them were prepared for battle, a true soldier would usually avoid fighting it if possible, for only they knew what horror war truly was, unlike the young warriors who have never seen battle, and who actually believe the battlefield is a place to earn glory. If only those fools could see the charred and maimed corpses, scattered limbs flying around, screams of the S&S, wails of people losing their loved ones, panic and fear in the eyes of soldiers before the deaths. It was not a pretty sight. Yahiko had once foolishly believed that he was strong enough to win an entire war by himself if it meant he could protect a megacure. But 2 years of warfare had broken that blind passion of his. Now he only wished to avoid a battle and instead settle for negotiations. But alas, his wish would not come true today as he saw what little brightness across the battlefield start to disappear. A wave of literal darkness spread across the battlefield which quickly engulfed the burning forest and unnervingly enough silenced the screams of the burning monsters within. And now that same darkness was charging towards them. What scared Yahiko more was the fact that whatever thing was sucked into the darkness was never seen again, no matter how hard he squinted his eyes. He could not see a damn thing. Even Ghost started to growl dangerously, unnerving the soldiers around the wolf. The Union bomber squadrons led by Kyusuke and Conan quickly retreated back within their army in order to avoid the approaching darkness. Only Naruto still remained standing at the front ahead of them all, much to everyone's horror as the king's eyes stared at the approaching darkness. Genjutsu, he thought. But this was no ordinary genjutsu considering the amount of chakra being used and the area across which it had actually spanned. It was even powerful enough to prevent him from seeing the engulfed forest and what was happening inside. Surprisingly, the wave of darkness stopped at the edge of the forest nearly 2 kilometers away from the fidgeting Union forces. And then it started to disappear rather abruptly. Naruto's eyes widened when he finally caught sight of the things before him. The burning forest that was previously being roasted due to the flames of hellfire was now completely destroyed, leaving behind charred and remains. The smell was awful and nearly made him gag despite his years of training. Controlling himself, his eyes widened when he first caught sight of movement in the sky. Hundreds of objects were fluttering right towards his forces. On closer inspection, his breath stopped as he realized it was human soldiers flying on some kind of strange machine. And in their hands was some sort of strange weapon. Alarmed, he turned back towards his forces, but it was too late. Hundreds of kunai rained down over the surprised Union forces in the blink of an eye, taking down dozens upon dozens of soldiers. Explosions ate apart Union ranks as few of the falling kunai were tagged with explosive notes. Naruto could only watch in horror as his entire frontal line was being decimated right in front of him. His soldiers tried hard to deflect the incoming kunai, but they were too fast and too many, resulting into more and more Union soldiers getting butchered. The sudden attack had left the Kazekage had Mizukage scrambling to perform defensive jutsu, but even those great warriors could not protect their entire army that was now a sitting duck for these flying soldiers and their strange but lethal weapons. In the midst of this Naruto heard another movement. Turning back to the front, he saw a massive movement in the forest, and soon enough hundreds upon hundreds of cursed seal warriors came charging out with growls. He unleashed his sword and looked at the two forces attacking his own. He had to make a decision, and fast. His dilemma was ended when he loud battle cry grabbed the attention of the panicking Union forces. Tonight we fight. Naruto caught sight of Yahiko sitting atop Ghost and charging across the broken Union ranks, yelling at the terrified soldiers by waving his sword at the approaching army of monsters. When this night ends, I promise you, the Union will stand. A wave of angry cheers followed at the shinobi's declaration as he raised his sword in the air, looking at all the soldiers. We all shall stand. The army of monsters was approaching close and closer, along with the raining death from the sky, yet the resolve of one young boy was enough to bolster that of thousands. Thousands of our brothers and sisters have defended the Union before. We have never failed before. We will not fail tonight. Naruto watched with great pride as the boy who once hesitated in even taking a life was now the one who rallied an entire army behind himself. Ghost howled as Yahiko turned towards the approaching army and pointed his sword forward. Follow me. The young boy sitting atop the giant wolf charged forward as Daibatsu started running after him while casting a last determined look at the Union soldiers. To the commander. Thousands of thirsty roars erupted as the Union forces charged after the two young boys from Yahiko swiftly passed by the stunned Naruto. I've got this, go. he shouted. Naruto didn't need any more suggestion as he raised his own sword and saw Konan along with Kyusuke and the bomber squadrons scrambling to the skies in order to counter the enemy aerial forces. He transformed into dark smoke and flew right towards the hundreds of flying ninjas. Already the flying ninja were losing their forces fast as Konan launched hundreds of paper shuriken, tearing apart either the men or the machines that allowed them to fly, sending them tumbling down to a gruesome death. Kyusuke was launching arrows at speed never thought possible, taking down scores upon scores of enemies. Apparently his devastation didn't go unnoticed as the next second he saw a shadow crash right into him, knocking him right off his paper bird. Kyusuke! Yelled Konan. Suddenly, the flying machine stopped working, sending both fighters tumbling down towards their deaths. Konan desperately flew downwards in order to save her friend until a dark wave of smoke grabbed him while letting the enemy fall towards the ground. Naruto quickly hopped on the nearest paper bird whose Union rider had already fallen to his death. Konan arrived a second later and perched beside her friend. She gasped on seeing the number of wounds across his body, including several ones on his vital organs. Nor did she miss Naruto's heartbroken gaze. But Kyusuke simply chuckled, which made him cough more. Guess it's too late to quite as a shinobi now, he mumbled, staring at his two friends. Konan sobbed with tears falling from her eyes as she grasped the small boy's hand. All he had wanted was this war to end so that he could retire from this violent life. A dream which he would never live to see. Kyusuke looked at the silent king who stared back at him. Naruto. Hi, whispered the king, as he grasped the hand Kyusuke had raised towards him. Look after them, he said, looking at the crying Konan and glancing back at the ground where their remaining friends were fighting. I will, promised the king, as he fought back his own tears or the rage swirling in his heart as Kyusuke smiled back at him. Wish I could have opened that Archer Academy and spent more time with you all and tell Yahiko to not let that Mizukage go, and like that deserves to be tapped, he whispered with his trademark perverted grin. Naruto weakly smiled and nodded, watching in grim sadness as one of his friends took in his last shaky breaths before going still. Konan screamed and shook the boy, who stared back at them blankly. It happened so fast and suddenly that left no room for either Kyusuke to react or for his friends to save him. It was war, and they had lost a loved one. Konan suddenly whirled with pure fury and hatred burning in her eyes as she stared at the flying enemy shinobi busy fighting against the remaining aerial forces of the Union. She was just about to charge when a firm hand was placed on her shoulder. Calm down. They came, my friend. I'll them all. She yelled. How could he be so calm after that? Naruto sadly stared at the body of his friend before looking back at her. He was my friend too, Konan. I wish I could have spent more time with him, but you need to calm down. If you charge in like this, you'll make a mistake or leave an opening which will result in your death as well. I have already lost one friend, please don't make me lose another, he whispered miserably, as he gently closed Kyusuke's open eyes. She slumped back in his arms as he comfortably held her. Fight with me, he urged. Hi. He heard her erratic breathing finally settle down, and when she broke the hug he saw an icy gaze staring back at him. The anger still burned brightly within her heart, but she was more focused and not deranged like before. They both flew away from the bird as Konan directed it to fly back towards the camp where Akeno would keep their friend's body safe. Staring at the retreating body of her friend, Konan finally turned around and saw Naruto glaring at the hundreds of flying enemy forces. You will all hear. He transformed into dark smoke and held his flaming green sword as he charged forward through the first few unlucky enough to be in his way, their torn falling gracelessly to the ground. The remaining flying ninjas tried to scramble away from the approaching demon, but Konan raised herself higher in the sky, unleashing hundreds of paper shuriken and explosive notes, tearing down the running enemy forces. One snarling ninja tried to stop her by trying to into her, but she grabbed him right by his face and flooded his mouth with paper tags before kicking him away. Meanwhile, Naruto was making quick work, resulting into destruction of the enemy forces at alarming speeds. Many tried to flee only to be seized down by Naruto's sword as he raced at great speed to avenge his fallen friend. He knew he had failed, that he couldn't protect a friend, but also knew that if he lost his cool then all was lost. So he channeled his grief and rage into focus as he seized down soldier after soldier. They were so weak, so pathetic. Apart from their flying machine and kunai launcher, they were abysmal in close-quarter combat. A fact they realized badly when Naruto teared them apart mercilessly. In half an hour, both him and Konan had the entire enemy force with a few stragglers flying away in terror. And it was only then he allowed his anger and pain to manifest. Conan watched him scream in agony and despair but didn't stop him even as a lone tear escaped from his eye. They had made so much preparations, so many plans, and yet. Naruto panted harshly after he finished screaming his lungs out. He helplessly stared at the empty sky save for few of his own bombers who looked at him sadly. It took him a few moments to regain himself as he tried to fight past the memories he had of Kyusuke. Look after them. His friend's last words echoed through his heart as he remembered he had to protect the remaining members of his group who were still fighting back down there. With a heavy heart, he looked at Conan and the remaining bombers. Follow me. It was every man fighting for himself down there except for the selected few that were fighting unitedly under the leadership of the two Cages and Hanzo along with Mifune and Galatea. He also saw the monsters were and devouring anyone in their path quite savagely. Nor could he find either Yahiko or Daibutsu in the bee carnage. Sound the retreat, he commanded. Naruto asked Conan in shock. Do it. She flinched at his harsh command but nodded and hurriedly started flying back towards the rear where Nagato was waiting with the messenger ninjas. Meanwhile, Naruto directed the bombers to unleash dozens of explosive tags across the battlefield, shredding multiple ranks of enemy forces. That was when the bright flare was fired high in the sky, capturing the attention of both armies. The Union soldiers blinked before they started to run back as if the devil himself was after them. Seeing their prey running away, the monsters growled and were about to chase when a new great presence stole their attention. Their eyes zoomed in on the one man who was not running away. One who was staring directly at them with not an ounce of fear of his eyes. Whose gaze was colder than death itself. "My king!" shouted panicked soldiers as they ran past him, alarmed when they saw their leader not retreating. Go! Just one word, but the strength and iron will in his eyes made the soldiers look away before continuing their retreat. When all of the soldiers ran past him and the monsters now ran towards him, Naruto's hands moved through a series of hand seals quite rapidly before he his hands on the ground. Fuin. A massive red-colored barrier spread across the battlefield, covering the retreat of the Union soldiers except for a small door-like structure in front of which Naruto himself stood. Dozens of monsters clashed head-on with the barrier and soon learned to their horror what a mistake it was as they were burned to death. Naruto stood guard over the sole opening of the barrier and soon stepped past it, followed by sealing the lone hole. He ignored the cries of his forces to get back as he took out his special three-pronged kunai. What happened next was something no Union soldier would ever forget. Dark flashes happened across the battlefield one after another for several long minutes as B after B of enemy forces started dropping to the ground at an alarming rate. It happened so fast that most people couldn't follow even a single movement of the king, and all they saw was their enemies falling and their screams echoing across the battlefield. All the Union leaders watched in fascination and horror as the wrath of a single man descended down upon a massive war. When it was over, only the king remained standing in the middle of the battlefield with mounted piles of bee lying gracelessly around him, torn to shreds. There was not an ounce of bee, dirt or any wounds on the young redhead boy. But he was down on one knee, panting harshly, taking in the he had wrecked with his own hands. However, he didn't get the chance to dwell on his guilt for what were once innocent people as he sensed a presence. Naruto ran past the thousands of he had just as desperation and fear gripped his heart. When he finally arrived at the place, his heart shattered. 100 cursed seal warriors lay around the form of a raggedly breathing ninja who had been torn to shreds himself. One of his hands was gone, so was a leg. A large chunk of his had been eaten away, and his was a gruesome sight of out innards. Naruto's legs wobbled and finally couldn't hold his weight as he fell to his knees beside the Union soldier. Did the soldiers and Daibatsu get away? Tried to buy some time. The young man in deep pain as he raised his hand which the tearful Naruto grasped weakly. Yes, they're safe, all of them, he whispered reassuringly, making the wounded boy tear up. Forgive me, I could not defeat them all. I failed all of you, lamented the boy miserably, as Naruto shook his head with tears falling from his eyes. No, Yahiko. You fought bravely and led our army when they needed you most. You kept your honor, now let me get you back so that Akeno can heal you, said Naruto weakly, as he tried to gently lift the boy but Yahiko brushed his hand away. Leave it. It's over, we cannot win against such evil, our union will fall, my village, I failed them all, whispered Yahiko sadly, as his breathing started to become ragged. Naruto grabbed the boy's cheeks gently and looked him in the eye. I do not know how, but I swear to you that I will not let the Union fall no matter what. Nor our people fail, promised Naruto fiercely. Yahiko looked into those strong blue eyes and the resolve in it gave him hope as he smiled at his friend. Our people, you, finally, acknowledged. Am, as, your, home, too, grunted Yahiko, remembering the stubborn Uzumaki boy who had always refused to call the Megakure his new home. But now, Naruto fought back the lump in his tea or the wail he wanted to shout at but he couldn't let his friend see his grief. He couldn't. There was a time when he had loathed this boy for his lack of resolve as a shinobi. Yet in the end, in the darkest hour when the world needed him most, Yahiko had answered the call. The domino saw the look in his friend and mentor's eyes which made him smile. He tried to reach his fallen sword and Naruto instantly gave him the weapon back which Yahiko then passed on to his friend. Give it to my little brother back home. It's his turn now, instructed Yahiko. I will, promised Naruto, making Yahiko smile a little more as he gripped Naruto's shoulder with his only remaining hand. I'm glad I followed you, my brother, my friend, my king. The hand on his shoulder fell back to the ground as Yahiko's lifeless eyes now stared back at him. Naruto heard shock gasps from nearby and saw their army had come back now that the barrier was gone. Daibatsu was comforting a crying Konan as he himself stared sadly at his friend who had led them all here and in the end remained behind to buy time for the rest of the soldiers to retreat back to safety. Mifune lowered his head in a respectful bow towards a fallen shinobi of his village making Galatea repeat the same action. Hanzo watched Naruto fight back his own tears as he lowered himself to lay a light K on his friend's forehead looking him in the eye. Be at peace, son of Am. The king hesitantly got up just in time as a horrified Mizukage saw the now boy and rushed towards him. It was an open fact that they had shared some affection between them as Mei openly wept while cradling Yahiko's corpse. Nagato approached his childhood friend and placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder as the king stared at Yahiko's sword in his hands. His family will look for his return from the towers of Omegakure. But he will not return, nor shall Kyusuke. Nagato's eyes widened on hearing about the death of another friend as he lowered his gaze to the ground. It was a bee-stained ghost that nudged both boys making them ruffle its fur sadly. Then suddenly the beast growled angrily. Not a moment later, a monstrous intent descended upon the area, the power of which drove many ninjas to their knees. Nagato hastily looked at the Union army. Nearly 1,000 soldiers were already dazed. Thousands more were injured, morale was low despite the initial victory and now this new presence had again ignited fear in the hearts of men. Hesitantly they started backing away in alarm as they saw a massive movement coming from the far side of the forest that was yet to be burned. Naruto's hardened gaze saw the enemy forces stepping out of the forest. They were a misfit group comprising of missing ninjas, mercenaries, thugs, and a few hundred remaining Konoha reserve forces. Their combined might could barely be about half of the Union army. But it was the ones leading this army that stopped his heart cold. Immense anger and pain spread through his heart as he saw an army of people that should be marching towards him. And leading them was the man who had caused all this suffering. Orochimaru grinned wickedly as he stood beside the forms of several figures that made the Union forces take several steps back in absolute terror. And they should, for he had brought forth the strongest warriors his village ever seen. On his right were the mighty Senju brothers, Hashirama and Tobirama. On his left was the famous Professor, Hiruzen Sarutobi. But at the forefront were two figures that he knew would drive his arch-enemy mad with rage. And mad he went. Orochimaru. The fifth Hokage smirked when Naruto's bee-curling scream echoed across the battlefield, stopping the terrified Union soldiers in their tracks. A dangerous aura equal to the ones being projected by the reanimated warriors was unleashed by the young boy as he saw people dear to his heart being used in such a disgusting manner. Hanzo now understood on seeing what was before him the reason behind Naruto being so cautious of this Konoha ninja. For now that same man had brought forth great shinobi who were strong enough to decimate an entire army. The most dangerous one being a familiar man with shock blonde hair and bright blue eyes that were also possessed by the king himself. And beside the threatening form of Minato Namikaze, was a young boy with jet black hair with Uchiha features who stared blankly at the king, which further enraged the young redhead Uzumaki. The ground started shaking as a massive dark chakra started to be unleashed out of Naruto's body. Unleashing his sword and mounting atop Ghost, the king charged. The terrified Union soldiers watched in horror and panic as the king charged ahead alone with rage burning through his heart. Was he truly going to face those legendary shinobi who were never once defeated in any battle? It was Hanzo who looked at the nervous troops and pointed his scythe. Go, go, follow your commander. With that command, the Omega Corps leader became the first man to follow after the charging king. Thousands of Union forces nervously stepped forward and started to raise their own weapons. They didn't know how those shinobi were now alive and standing before them, but it didn't matter anymore. Nagato raised his own sword, pointing it at his brave friend, and yelled loudly for every man and woman to hear. The king in the north. Daibutsu and Konan raised their own fists as Nagato charged forward. The king in the north. Orochimaru's eyes widened when the ground beneath his feet started shaking as 17,000 bee warriors charged right at him fearlessly, despite the real threat of facing the greatest cages the world had ever seen. All he could see was the sight of Naruto charging towards him on his wolf with madness in his eyes, and behind him came running the massive Union army with one single battlecry that sent shivers down Orochimaru's spine. The king in the north. The king in the north. The king in the north. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.